we're going to try to make this a quick, efficient meeting, get all the things done we need to talk about. So, and I'm sure everybody will love to have some time back, so that'll be great. Okay, well, we'll go ahead and get started. I think everybody here, I think most of the people here were at the commission meeting the most recent commission meeting we just had. But just quickly wanted to just, address the elephants, plural. I think there's lots of them in the room, which of course is, if you weren't in that meeting, spend a significant portion of that commission meeting, in addition to the formal work that need to take place, just talking about the current climate and the things that are happening around us, both within and outside of our control, especially around AmeriCorps. So spend a lot of time talking about that. Jim and his team, of course, have been right in the brunt of it, managing it, as well as those of you on the screen that are AmeriCorps affiliated, so the Jasons of the world, have been right in the middle of it. One of the items that came out of that meeting, just so you all are aware, is in addition to the formal committee meetings and the big commission meeting, was pulling together the executive committee to really get in the weeds and chat through some strategic planning around worst case scenarios and just mapping out possibilities of things that could happen and kind of planning ahead. And appreciative to Jim and Terry that we're already on it. Those emails have already been flying back and forth, and looking at dates and all the things. So I just want to provide that update that outside of our committee meeting, some small people that are going to try to get together and brainstorm and worst case scenario and things like that. So anything, Jim, Latifa, Candace, to add to that? I just want to add that because I know there are a couple people that might not have been at the meeting. Okay. Well, I'm going to probably start with the updates, and then we'll save the roadshow for the end because I think there's a couple of items of actual discussion related to the roadshow. So I'm probably going to start with CSP. So Latifa, any updates you want to share or information you want to provide?
Yeah, so I could share something with you all after, and I know that the focus is on the roadshow. Of course, June 10th is coming up. We right now, Candace might know the answer to this more, but I think we're like halfway at registration, which is 60 folks. And the biggest things that I have to get done prior to the launch is really working on the website. Of course, we have that gap in the communications persons right now. And then being able to like actively post certain things because we decided not to necessarily like market the event because it's only 60 folks. So like more so marketing just like corporate social purpose in general as we like come up to the launch, like the benefits, etc. And I think also just this committee really thinking about intentionally how the commission will continue to sustain this group in the future. Right now, of course, like I as the AmeriCorps person is doing this, but how we'll like integrate that into like the commission's work. And then also just again, be able to stay in this group in a good way in the future is something I hope the group can think about. Nathan, I think that's it for now.
Perfect. Awesome. Any updates on the logo situation? Because wasn't it due the last week, maybe? Or I may be making that up.
It was due last week. And so we got 3 submissions from a Belmont student or from Belmont students. Right now we have, thank you, Nathan, for bringing that up. So we have those 3. And then one of our new network core members, which is the leadership group now, they actually have their own communications marketing business and they offered to do the logo too. So we have options now, and it's just now about me having the capacity to turn my attention to it and make it happen and talk to our team internally, and then maybe be able to share that with you all, at least the options, and then really get it to the network core meeting, which is in 11 days.
Excellent. Awesome. Thank you. And for context, for those that may not know, so the CSP leadership folks have been working on some logo options and they kind of outsourced it. Not outsourced, that's the wrong word, but invited college students and things to offer some potential options, similar to what we did for, I think, the Governor's Volunteer Star Awards a couple of years ago. So got some options in, and Latifa and her team are kind of working through those. And then when the appropriate time in the process, we as a committee will get to see some of those as well and perhaps offer some feedback. So thank you. That is great. On that note, before I move to the next item, Jim, do you want to provide, if you have one, and if not, that's okay. I know I'm putting you on the spot because I didn't ask you this in advance. Do you want to provide a quick update on the situation regarding the communications position? I know right now I think my understanding is we're probably not going to move forward at this moment in time with refilling that position, and that may be inaccurate. If that is inaccurate, correct me. But just so folks know kind of where we're at in terms of that position, not that position, that sort of a thing.
Yeah, sure. So we wanted to wait until we get a little bit of clarity on what's going on at the national level before we refill a vacant slot, just in case. I mean, there's no indication right now that the AmeriCorps agency and DOJ are going to try to either cut or eliminate state commission support grants or the commission investment fund, which are two main there are two only operational grants. So there's no indication that that's going to happen, but we thought with all the uncertainty around AmeriCorps in general that it would be best to just wait a bit until we get some clarity on that, until DOJ actually leaves AmeriCorps and we can see, are they done with the cuts, or they still have more to do? So yeah, we haven't done any postings yet. We haven't kind of put it out there yet. So we're just kind of in a wait and see mode for at least the short term. I mean, I do hope eventually that we'll be able to get some clarity and go ahead and post that position and open it up. But for right now, I think it's probably best if we just wait.
Perfect. Thank you, Jim. Any questions from anyone on that? I just wanted him to, yeah.
I just throw it out there. I think it makes sense. I mean, with the folks that we already got, I think it gives you more options just to make sure folks are taken care of. So, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And again, there's no indication that DOJ and AmeriCorps are going to try and cut commissions, but it's still a possibility. Until they actually leave the agency and move on to the next federal agency, that is still a possibility. So yeah, I think it's kind of the safe conservative thing to do, is to just wait. And yeah, and I think given how completely uncertain things are, it makes the most sense.
Other questions, comments for Jim? Thank you, Jim. I think that was helpful. So, okay, awesome. On the transitioning down to the state service plan. So, as you all will recall, we had that, and we went over this during the commission meeting, but had that small group of committee chairs and a couple of plus ones from the other commissioners from each committee, worked over a series of a couple of meetings to pull together kind of those key bucket areas of opportunity and focus related to the new 3-year plan. Those buckets at a very high level, not having been wordsmith, but at a very high level, were presented at the commission meeting, the most recent commission meeting. And I think we tweaked and played with those a little bit, and basically got the blessing from the commission to move forward in those general directions. So just wanted to update the group that now what is going to happen is.
Can I interrupt you?
Yes, yeah.
Nate?
Yes.
I got to the meeting late, so I don't know what the buckets are. Do you mind?
Yes. Do you have that document, Jim? You might be able to pull up and
yeah, sure.
Do the 2-minute overview version.
Yeah, hold on just one
Awesome.
second.
Thank you, Amy. That's helpful.
Yeah. Okay, so sure I'm opening the right one. Okay, yeah. So this is kind of the refined version. So that committee did some work, and then Kim went in and kind of did the bullet points underneath the ABCD, et cetera. So supporting a robust network of volunteers and service learners, building capacity for volunteers, maximizing the value of communications and partnership, and then operating with excellence. Those were the 4 key areas. And so the first 3 are more external in terms of what the commission is doing out in the community. And the 4th was more of an internal set of goals for developing the commission and financial oversight, et cetera. So that's kind of how the And so the three kind of external are on the screen right now.
And I think for context, I think one of the big kind of guiding principles behind this entire what you're seeing on the screen was trying to, from that committee, I think myself included, was trying to take a step back from being super hyper focused in on specific issue areas. So if you recall, our current plan has very specific target goals around food insecurity, for example, or around insert any number of issues or topics. So I think the goal from those conversations, and everybody was pretty much in support of from that committee, trying to focus more on what really is within our direct area of control as the commission, right? The Volunteer Tenancy Commission itself doesn't really, we don't do food work, right? Second Harvest Food Bank does that, right? Now, what we do is support Second Harvest. How do we support Second Harvest? Is by ensuring they have volunteers, by ensuring that they feel supported, that sort of a thing. So trying to be intentional about how we phrase and how we identify our goals to ensure that they're actually physical, tangible things that we could program around. Because we, as the commission, again, we probably can't solve food insecurity, right? But we can help support infrastructure that would help the entities that are doing food insecurity do their work better. So I think that was kind of the guiding principle behind all of what you see on the screen. But questions? Awesome. Okay.
That's
Thank
excellent.
you, Jim.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for that. That's excellent, guys. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jim. I appreciate it. And thank you, Amy, for pulling that up. It didn't even dawn on me, so that is helpful. So during the big commission meeting, that document that you just saw from Jim is essentially what was presented. Again, very like 30,000 foot level, broad buckets, obviously need some wordsmithing, need some more detail. So the next steps, and correct me if I'm wrong, from my recollection, is we're gonna rely on that same team to come back together and do a little bit more quickly, some wordsmithing, adding a little bit more specificity to some of those bullet points. So for example, one of the bullet points under the first section was just awards programs. What does that really mean? What does that actually mean? What are we hoping to accomplish? And just trying to add a little bit more direction and detail to each of those areas. And then that document, kind of in its current format with a little bit more wording to be a little bit more explanatory and narrative, will be essentially what we will share out for at least some initial reviews and updates or feedback from partners and things like that in its first iteration. Is that correct, Jim? Did I get that right?
Yeah, I think so. I think that, and Terry can certainly confirm as chair, but yeah, I think that was kind of the end result of the conversation from last Friday, was to now get that group back together and do a little bit more work on fleshing things out a little bit more. And like you said, kind of adding in some of the, I was taking notes during the meeting last week of, like you said, what does that mean in terms of what are the awards programs? What are the promotion and engagement activities that we do, and putting in specifics under that so that it's but it's clear both to us who kind of know what we're talking about, and also to the general public what we're talking about when we say these things.
Thank you. And Candace.
I just had a quick question. Is the target date to have this portion completed by the August commission meeting, or is the target to have it to the other committees and have them have worked on it before the August meeting?
I think I don't have the state plan timeline in front of me right this second, but I think the goal is to have the committees do a little bit more work in preparation for the August meeting. So at the August meeting, the commission can actually develop the first draft of its plan. And then that draft plan would then go back out for public comment, and then it would be finalized at the year-end retreat in November.
Okay, thank you.
So
for
yeah,
the clarity.
yeah. So I think there's going to have to be two things that happen kind of close to each other. One is that the group of chairs and plus one will have to meet fairly quickly fairly soon to kind of talk a little bit more. And then the committees will have to meet before August to do a little bit of committee work, so that we can start getting that kind of draft ready so that the entire commission can talk about it at the August meeting.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
And Jim, and prior to the August meeting, of course, would be, so when we'll get to the roadshow here in a minute. So in that pipeline, so what, if we're doing these focus groups, what people in the focus groups would be responding to would essentially be closer to what we currently have, not what we're discussing at the August meeting. Is that right?
Yeah, I think what we would get in terms of public input would be input put on those 4 big picture categories, and ask the public, in terms of what's going on in their communities, how could the commission utilize its resources specifically from those 4 primary goals within their communities, and kind of collect that input. And then that would be available also, in addition to the committee work, would be available to the commission at the August meeting to kind of look at the public input, the committee input, and then again, develop that kind of draft plan with some, because we do, well, let me say, I think it's best if we have some measurable goals. The commission doesn't have to. I mean, the commission can kind of develop its state plan as it sees fit. But I think it's better if there are some sort of measurable goals. So developing those measurable goals, I think that first step is what I think should come out of the August meeting, is that kind of that first draft of what are the numbers going to look like for these things. And Terry had her hand up before.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to say, Amy, also, we're talking about the committee structure, and we had a short discussion about, instead of calling them committees, maybe teams, and then that's when we got into the buckets. So we got these 4 buckets, and so we are going to talk about how to structure our committees, teams, so that we can focus on our mission and our goals. We also talked about the grants committee, which is very tiny, and maybe incorporating it into either another committee team, or, trying to figure out how to best meet the needs of what the grants committee does, so that they're consistent with the people who are on that team or committee. And also, that's what I want to share. I don't think you were there for that discussion, but I think it was an important discussion that we had surrounding that.
Other questions, comments in regards to the state service plan, any of the items we just discussed? Okay. Well, with that, so more to come on the state service plan. So it looks like the work is now in the hands of that small group of folks. And Jason, of course, will be in that team. He wasn't able to join us for the first meeting, but he'll be invited back to that second follow-up meeting. So I think that will be good. And then Andrea as well, who's not here today, but I think she's on that list as well. So we'll have a couple of folks from our team that are offering some input and thoughts on those as well. One added benefit of this whole process is our committee's meeting monthly. So I feel like we've got the ability to offer some quick communication and feedback, more so than a couple of other committees. So that's a nice little added benefit of being on the Frankenstein committee. So congratulations. With that, I probably got a hard stop at about 11:35-ish. So I'm going to transition us to the roadshow. So am I able to share my screen? Maybe, let me try.
You should be able to.
Okay, are you able to see
Looks
like
good.
a Word document? Okay, perfect. So quick overview of kind of how we got to where we're at, because I know there were a couple of people that are on the call today that weren't in one of the last 2 committee meetings. So of course, been working on the roadshow. The last committee meeting, I shared a document with you all. That was a draft document. It's what you see on the screen right here. This is what we went over during that. That basically highlighted some high-level goals of what we hope to accomplish through the roadshow. Increase awareness of Volunteer Tennessee and its mission at kind of a high level, gather community input on the state service plan. That's the focus group component that Jim and I were just talking about. And then really wanted to try to figure out a way to bring in some sort of a disaster preparedness and emergency preparedness component that even if it was small, whether it just be some education, whether it be a service project, and lots of different options. So we had that conversation. Through that conversation, the previous committee meeting, got some feedback on a couple of edits or things to add or some focal points. Those are what you see highlighted in yellow on this version of the document. So if it's highlighted in yellow, that is a change or an addition. So what was added from that conversation was, in addition to highlighting all of the broad programs that Volunteer Tennessee has and just uplifting kind of the mission and the brand, several folks mentioned wanting to really focus in on and be intentional about the SERVS network, that is something that there's a lot of potential around, a lot of opportunity around, and there's value in being able to do that boots on the ground that you can't do necessarily on social media, right? The ability, while you've got the partners in the room, to push it. So that was a very intentional from a couple of folks that, can we please really heavily emphasize that all the programs, but especially Tennessee Serve. So that is why you see that there. Mentioned specifically as well, talking about kind of who the target audience is and being very intentional. And I think Candace might have brought this up and a couple of others as well, being very intentional about trying to engage some of our higher ed partners, as well as those entities we have on the ground that aren't AmeriCorps entities, but that are partnered with us. So like the volunteer centers, perhaps, or some of those entities, and being very intentional about how we engage and communicate with those folks, because we want them at the table too. We want them to participate. So really, for the most part, for this first goal, when we talk about increase awareness of Volunteer Tennessee, its mission and all of its programs, the audience is really kind of everyone. It's anybody that touches the commission in some capacity, right? Whether that be an elected official, whether that be a nonprofit or community agency, whether that be somebody utilizing the platform, or whether that be somebody that perhaps is hosting AmeriCorps members, or as a program lead, right? So everyone is essentially the target audience for that specific goal. As opposed to, of course, the input from the state service plan, where there's going to be some intentionality, right? We don't want a room of 100 people and try to have a focus group. That would not be effective. But being a little bit more intentional for the focus groups, specifically on who's in the room, that can help us as a commission better inform our state service plan. And then the other addition that we chatted through a little bit in that meeting was that perhaps the nature of whatever we do in the disaster space might differ from location. It might not quite be copy and paste. It could be, but it could be in one place. It could just be as simple as we just want to set up some sort of an informational thing and just educate people on perhaps CERT programs if there's one in that community. Or perhaps if we're going in a community that doesn't have a CERT program, maybe that's the goal, right? Maybe we're intentionally setting up a meeting between our CERT folks, between Dawn and whoever there in the community may be able to get a CERT program off the ground, right? So that may differ from location to location, but again, wanting to find some, even if it's a small way, to do a little bit of some issue-focused work. So that was the feedback that came from our previous committee meeting. Again, those areas in yellow, but for the most part, the big buckets remain the same. Increasing awareness broadly, specifically doing focus groups, and then something in the disaster and emergency space. So following that meeting, Jim and Candace and I think it was just the three of us, had a chance to sit down and touch base and actually workshop the kind of meat and potatoes of the project, which is the actual locations, the actual timing. What does the day actually look like? What are we actually doing? And what are all the people costs that might be affiliated with those things? So as you'll see on the screen here, this is a draft, essentially a very high level draft of what we talked about in that meeting as a potential path forward. So I wanted to share that with you all today, and I'll briefly kind of highlight that, invite Candace and Jim to offer some thoughts as well. But before we really moved on anything, I just wanted to make sure that you all had a chance to say, is this the right direction? Is this not the right direction? Before we actually took action on any of those. So from the conversation that Jim, Candace, and I had, of course, the summer can be challenging scheduling wise. So what we did is we did take some time to actually pull out some calendars in terms of like Volunteer Tennessee commitments, some staff scheduling, some other key programming, holidays, and tentatively identified that really the middle to later half of July is probably the target time frame, right? June is probably too soon. That also conflicts with a couple of other key work areas that are taking place already with some Volunteer Tennessee staff. So again, looking at probably July, later July after 4th of July. Again, these could be concurrent. So this could be, you know, a couple of these visits, site visits are taking place over a couple of days back to back to back. It could be that, or it could be that they're just scattered throughout that period, right? There may be one this week, another one another week, another one another week, depending on space availability and schedules. But roughly that window of time was the time we had identified. What we also talked about in that conversation was, is there a realistic way, a realistic yet an optimistic way to prioritize locations and be a little bit more thoughtful and strategic? Through that conversation, we thought it may be a bit of an ask to try to squeeze in 7, 8, 9, 10 site visits and do these things over the period of 3.5 to 4 weeks. So what we thought through was, is there perhaps some intentionality behind just doing a couple during July with some target communities, and then going back and maybe doing a second round later down the road, perhaps in the fall or later. We didn't really add timeline to that. And what we landed on as a potential model for that was really focusing on the rural communities in July. So focusing more on, and you'll see some of the locations we brainstormed here on the screen. We brainstormed, let's say we did 3, 1 in each division, but focused on a little bit more of a rural or a mid-sized city in the division. So Jackson, perhaps Clarksville, and then somewhere in East Tennessee, we brainstormed several possible locations, a Crossville, a Cleveland, which is outside of Chattanooga. If you want to be closer to the disaster space, you could perhaps come up to a Morristown or a Johnson City if you wanted to dip into that area a little bit and be more intentional. But really, again, trying to identify a location in each of the 3 divisions, focused on rural communities, and then look at perhaps coming back and doing a round 2 that was a little bit more hyper-focused on the metro areas. And part of the justification behind that was, and I appreciated Candace sharing this during the meeting as somebody who's in the Memphis area, was sometimes it's easier to get people, if you think about Memphis to Jackson, sometimes it's easier to get people to come from Memphis to Jackson than it is to get people from Jackson to come to Memphis. So the ability to, just from a travel perspective, from a not wanting to go into the city, you know, I mean, that the same could be same for any of the metro areas, right? Whether you're talking about Knoxville, Chattanooga, Nashville. So again, focusing on rural perhaps would still allow others to participate, but would offer some intentionality. And then again, if we feel like it's going well, we could extend that beyond. So that was a little bit around timing and locations. What does a visit actually look like? We spent some time on that too. And what we envisioned, again, high level, is imagine in one space, starting off with some sort of a high level Volunteer Tennessee reception welcome. So this is probably a couple of talking heads from a podium or with a microphone, right? A Jim or some staff, or perhaps a Terry or commissioners, whoever might be there. Again, some high-level overviews. Maybe there's some swag or materials that we're giving out, right? Information about some of the programs. And in that room, though, again, is all of those people we talked about earlier, right? If you've got elected officials that are in the area, you got your nonprofit partners, if you've got AmeriCorps hosts, anybody that is in any way directly or indirectly connected to the commission or the work of Volunteer Tennessee, or I will add, isn't but has the potential to be. I think that's very important, right? There's a lot of folks that I think could benefit from Volunteer Tennessee that perhaps aren't currently connected. We, of course, would extend some invitations to those kinds of folks as well. But really some sort of a high-level welcome. Imagine a little bit more like a reception, like you would have, you know, a 30, 45-minute something before a larger event. A chance for people to just connect, talk, network a little bit. And then we would follow that up with a more limited by invite focus group. So some of those people would stay to do a focus group. And we would be, obviously we don't necessarily need our elected officials there for the focus groups, right? They're not really our target audience, but we would love to have them there in the room when we're doing the reception. So that's kind of what the day looks like. And then again, as a part of that, tagging on some sort of a disaster component. I'll pause on next steps and action items. So just with that, Jim, Candace, you all were in those conversations. What did I miss in terms of our discussion? I'm sure I missed something.
No, I think you wrapped it up. It sounds good to me. Sounds good to me.
Katie.
Microphone.
There
we go. There's a mic. I'm wondering if you would consider doing like a Northeast Tennessee and in Southeast Tennessee because of the time change, the distance from Southeast Tennessee to those Northeast Tennessee communities that definitely need a conversation up in the Northeast.
So you're
But
thinking more
also
like a
doing one in the
Chattanooga,
Southeast.
like a Chattanooga or
Something
something.
or outside of Chattanooga, right? Because it is a good, I don't know. I think it's like a 4-hour drive
It is.
from,
It is
from
that.
southeast to northeast because of that slant that goes up in there. So anyway,
That's
just a thought.
Thank you. That's helpful. Nestor?
Good morning, everyone. I'm sorry I start talking without my mic being out. It's good to see everyone here. Thank you for your grace and mercy that all the time. I missed a couple of the last two, so I appreciate Amy, just the overview and all that. Thank you guys so much for getting me caught up. I have a question for you guys, Nathan. The Clarksville AJC. Do you guys have a place that will facilitate that Clarksville area? And the reason I say that the AJC, it's beautiful, it's big. It encompasses the Fort Campbell there, the transitioning soldiers, and some of them retire when they come out. We have about 300 soldiers, almost a month, that come out. I think it'd be a great opportunity if you can use the AJC there in Clarksville. If you haven't, let me know if you'd like to. I'll get you in contact with the AJC partners that we have in there so that you can see if you can have it there. I think the hosting would be amazing since we have our military family members and they're transitioning. It would be great. That's a suggestion, partner. I just want to offer that, okay? For Clarksville area, if you don't have that already set up.
That is very helpful. And for some context, thank you, Nestor. For some context, one of the items, and this is on kind of that next step action items. So what we had discussed is if we could really, perhaps in this commission meeting, and I know we're close to time, if we go ahead and lock in and say, yeah, we feel good about these 3 or perhaps 4, to Katie's point, cities, then we could be intentional and start doing some reach outs to see if we've got some partners in those spaces that would be willing to serve as a site host for whatever this event is. Of course, we're looking for some specific types of space because we need to have a little bit of a reception and also some focus groups, right? So looking for some certain space parameters. But I think, Nestor, to your point, right, if we're able to say we want to go here, and here's the date range, do we have any takers, right? It sounds like we got our first one, which is great. And Candace, I think, just asked a question about, is it available? Nestor says it is. Great. So the work is already happening. Wonderful, wonderful. Other big thoughts and feedback in terms of around timeline, around locations? Is there something we're missing? Yeah, Candace.
If anybody has any ideas that you just sort of like what Nestor said, do you just want them to send it to like you and you send it to me and Jim, just include everybody in the reply email? Like how would taking those sort of happen between now and the next meeting?
Yeah, definitely. I'm okay with what you just proposed, unless you have something, Candace or Jim, that you would prefer differently. But I'm okay with what you just proposed of it. Just send an email. Here's CC these 3 people and go from there. But if you would rather that go directly to you or something different, do you have a recommendation, Candace?
Nope. Just trying to just trying to put some put those boots on the ground. And I know that you have to lead. So if anybody has any ideas or any welcome facilities, just go ahead and send them to the whole group, me, Nathan, and Jim, however that works. But and then we can sort of vet them from there.
Yeah. And we can include that in the follow-up email as well. We'll
Okay.
remind you, but yep, I think that would be good. And so just so everybody on the screen's aware, so again, we're looking at this window of kind of like second half to later July. So again, if it's only free 2 or 3 days in that window, that might still be okay, right? So as long as we know what the location is and the possibilities and where in that window it might be free, I think that would then probably allow Candace, Jim, and I to sit down and map out what this beast might look like, right? Okay, we know we got some space options here, we've got some space options here, and we can puzzle piece it a little bit. But I think that sounds great, Candace. So let me ask this: what is the group's thought? And this might be a Candace and Jim question as well on this idea of a 4th location, doing a southeast versus a northeast. As somebody who's in Northeast Tennessee, I can say I love that idea. Northeast Tennessee feels as though they are in no way connected to Chattanooga. That might as well be in Europe. So, I mean, I love that idea. I know logistically that's one more location, but I don't know, Candace, Jim, do you all have any thoughts or concerns about the feasibility of that?
Uh, yeah. I mean, just really just the in terms of when we want to get them done. If we're sorry. Yeah, I think that would be kind of the only thing is like when we want to get these done, because we talked about having a couple before the August meeting and then some after. Just timing wise, it'd be hard to fit in a whole lot before the August meeting, but I think we can do as many as we want after the August meeting. The component about the state plan might change a little bit. So rather than getting just kind of general input on those big picture goals after the August meeting, we could be getting input on the specific measurable draft plan. But we could still do that.
Thank you, Jim. Other big thoughts, feedback around timeline and locations? Because I feel like that's probably the priority at this moment, because that gives us the ability to start looking at some actual details. What I would also add, and then I'll probably have to hop off here in just a moment, what I would also add is when we say locations and site hosts, Candace will laugh when I say this, we're hoping for free. that is the goal. Is we're hoping for free. Our goal is to really try to pull these off for little to minimal cost. Obviously, there's going to be cost around getting staff and travel time and hotel. I mean, those costs are going to exist regardless. But in terms of like the work it takes to actually do the events, we're trying to keep them as fairly low cost as possible. We know we may still need a few dollars and maybe some sponsors for some food or some light refreshments or something, coffee, whatever it might be, but keeping them as low cost. So as you're brainstorming some potential locations, whether they be something you control or somebody else, just know our ask is that they're ideally $0 signs. So is that correct, Candace? Okay.
Yep. I couldn't have
just wanted
said
to
it
add
better
that.
myself.
Yeah,
Couldn't have said it
just
better.
add that. We have no budget, so that is the goal. Yes. So, okay, with that, I really do have to hop off. I am going to invite, if folks, I mean, there's theoretically still about 15 more minutes. If folks have a couple of other comments, Latifa, Candace, Jim, if you all want to jot those down, perhaps. But I think if we feel good about the location situation, and Candace and Jim and I can pull back together either via email and I'll chat with them and really lock these in and maybe start sending out some asks. But if you know some locations already that you think you're willing to offer up or get us connected to, start sending them our way. I think that would be helpful. So, okay, I'm gonna.
I have a quick.
Yeah.
Okay, so when we holding this event, is it like an open to the public thing, or is there a set invite list? Because how public the space we reserve might rest on that. If it's people can just show up, and in our case, I could probably arrange a room for free, but everybody coming would have to be on a guest list and be able to be admitted, and we have to make sure we have parking and all that kind of thing, because we're not really open to just people showing up. So, I mean, that might make a difference to where we do it. Same with some universities.
Yep. I would say from my perspective, and then Candace and Jim, because their perspectives may differ, I don't think I necessarily probably envision this as here's the location, date and time, drop by on Facebook. I don't think I envisioned it that way. I think in my mind, to your point, Amy, was probably we've got an invite list. It may be a big invite list, right? But we've got an invite list that we forward invitations out to, and some folks are RSVPing. So I don't think in my mind I envisioned it as we're going to be here from this time to this time, drop by at your convenience, come one, come all. Maybe that's what we're doing. I don't think that's necessarily what I had envisioned. Candace, you probably have thoughts on, and maybe not, but.
I honestly hadn't thought about the invitation list just yet. So I'm not really sure.
I would say one barrier, if we did it more public, would be if you don't know who's coming and you're talking about costs and needs and space, that's probably more challenging, right? If it truly is just kind of a drop by, pop up at your own convenience kind of an event. Especially if you're trying to do like a reception with some light refreshments, right? Light refreshments for 40 people is very different than light refreshments for 150 people. So I think just some very logistic questions as well. But I think where my head is, Amy, is it's probably a little bit more invite. If that answers your question. Okay. Other big thoughts? Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I will type up, I'll add a couple of more quick notes. I'm going to quit so I actually can see your all faces. I'm going to quit sharing my screen. I will type up a couple of those quick notes. Candace and Jim, I'll reach out to you all and we can chat, I think, through on how next steps for us. But for those of you on the screen, if you already know of some locations, so we've already got one from Nestor of some potential locations. Again, you've got some rough dates, and again, we'll share those via email. Go ahead and feel free to send those to Candace, Jim, and I, and we'll try to maybe compile a little bit of a list that we can at least work off of. Of course, this is not locking us into anything because we don't quite know where we're going to be and when, but at least we'll have some options to play with. But I think that at this moment in time, that's probably our biggest next step, because you can't do invitations. You really can't plan anything else until you know when and where you're doing it. So Jim, Candace, Latifah, anything else from you all? And I'll give everybody some time back. Latifah. Okay. One question, Latifah, on your comment. So Latifah says we could potentially ask some corporate partners to donate a location. I love that idea. My one question would be, are there any concerns with that in terms of, I know we didn't want this entity to be we brought them together to ask them for money entity or for space. So, because I know we were intentional about that. So I don't want to abuse that relationship, right?
Yeah, this is what I'm thinking. The only reason why I bring it up is because I referenced this to Nikki, and Nikki was like, we should ask. And so I was like, oh, let's think about it. And I think we'll talk about that at our meeting on Thursday. Yeah.
Yeah, and
I just want to be, yeah. Sorry, go, Jim.
Well, no, that's okay. I think asking for space is different than asking for money. You know, we'll ask all of our partners if they have space for us. You know, so it won't be like we're just singling out the corporate social purpose folks. We'll ask all of our partners if they have space and can host us.
Okay. Thank you all so much, Candace, Jim, Latifah. I'll reach out and follow up. Thank you, everyone. This has been great. You get 15 minutes back. Enjoy it. If it's like here, it's rainy and stormy and super gross. There's not much to enjoy, but make the most of it. And we'll see you all soon. Okay.
Thank you, Nathan.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you all so much.
Bye, guys.
Bye.